quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
House Republicans begin the voter ID discussion. Adults, you could face charges for not reporting a child as missing. And banning the box should employers ask applicants about their criminal histories. Good evening, I'm Kelly McCullum. Thanks for watching Legislative Week in Review. Let's begin this week's show with a discussion on voter ID. Democratic Governor Beth Perdue vetoed a Republican-backed voter ID bill just 2 years ago. Voter ID is back for 2013. It's Republican-sponsored, but now Republicans control the levers of government. House Republican leaders revealed their timetable for rolling out voter photo ID legislation.
We're going to go through a very deliberative, responsible, and an interactive approach through public hearings, through hearings in the legislature, so that we arrive at a policy that is fair, that takes into account legitimate reasons why voters may not have an ID, and to put into place a solution, a way that those IDs can be issued.
House Elections Committee Chairman Representative David Lewis says his gold standard legislation would ensure the legitimacy of every vote cast in North Carolina.
We believe that the integrity of the election system itself is important. We are doing this so that every North Carolinian, every citizen who's entitled to vote, has the opportunity to do so, and that vote counts.
House GOP leaders say they're welcoming critics of voter ID into this discussion. Not that it will stop any legislation, but it could improve the process of getting IDs to voters while revealing other overlooked logistical challenges.
It truly is about being inclusive. I think it's recognizing the latest polls that indicate 3/4 of Americans favor this. So I think it is an effort to be bipartisan, and we really do try to work bipartisan most of the time.
House Republicans say the first public hearing on voter ID will be Tuesday, March 12th in the House Elections Committee. The hearing will be webcast. Elections Committee Chairman David Lewis says there will be no vote that day. House Republicans say their voter ID legislation will be released in late March.
Nearly everyone you ask has an opinion on voter ID. And with that in mind, we want folks to come forward and express their ideas, express their concerns.
House Democratic leader Representative Larry Hall joins us. Well, you saw the press conference with Speaker Tillis, held your own. What do you make of the, reach across the aisle bipartisan effort of voter ID?
Well, I hope it is, in fact, that, our biggest responsibility is to make sure the voters of North Carolina and the citizens of North Carolina have that right to vote and express their opinion. So whatever we do, that needs to be the #1 focus.
Republicans say they got a mandate here. They got elected, plus you look at all the polls, and they're saying 3/4 of North Carolinians don't mind showing a photo ID.
Well, I'm not sure that's exactly what the poll says, but I'm sure that all North Carolinians want to ensure that they have a right to vote and that they should be allowed access to the voting and poll places. So to the extent they want to do that, then let's do that.
Do you have any doubts that the Republicans will pass some form of voter ID? Or can you stop it, or do you slow it down and try to morph it as best you can to your image, if there is an image of the Democratic Party to be placed in this?
Well, I think we make the effort to ensure it guarantees that access we talked about. There are going to be some cost implications here. We know that, and the question becomes, do you want to be true to your word and ensure not only that there's integrity in the voting process, but do you want to make sure that people have that access, that guaranteed right under the Constitution that we swore when we were sworn in to protect? That's the #1 thing. And so our whole value system, our whole government is based on that. So that's our #1 priority, to ensure access and the opportunity for the citizens to vote freely.
How easy is it, in your opinion, for this policy to go askew and leave people out of the system, legitimate voters?
Well, first of all, this is a solution looking for a problem. We don't have a problem with illegitimate voters in North Carolina to start with. And so the question then becomes, can you make it accessible? Can you make it fair, and can you engender the confidence of the people in the system? Again, if we look at the facts, there's not a problem. But if we're going to go down this path, we should modernize our voting system, make sure people have that opportunity to vote, and we make it as widely available as possible.
I've read dozens of articles on voter ID across America, but I'll ask you, why do you think voter ID will likely come to North Carolina, given the legislative majorities.
Well, it won't create jobs, we know that. It won't increase the education of our workforce, we know that. And so it has become a distraction more so than anything else, where people have said, this is a problem. And we know, like mom and apple pie, everybody favors mom, everybody favors apple pie, everybody thinks folks should vote properly. So I think that's what it is. It's not a solution to the major problems facing North Carolina.
Yeah, I have to say, I've not been to many press conferences where leadership would come out, not with a bill, but with a schedule for reaching the bill's release, which would be the last week of March. They say in public hearings, you'll get 2 shots at the public hearing. It'll be webcast in that legislative office building, room 643. Will this be a fair debate? Will it be an honest debate and an honest accounting of the public concern, or dog and pony show and they're going to pass whatever they want anyway?
Well, I think if people recall, we went through this process to some extent last year, and we took significant steps to try to work on the legitimate concerns Republicans had. We almost had a compromise bill. They decided to walk away from that. We had those discussions and hearings, and the question is not, can we have a discussion or a hearing? The question is, are you going to accept the legitimate ideas and play by the rules and the facts when you craft your legislation? And we hope that they'll do that.
What empowers Republicans to push voter ID so strongly and Democrats to pose such a defense of it or an opposition to it?
Well, once again, it's been given this catchphrase, voter ID, but it involves so much more, because what they're trying to do is manipulate the voting system, and we want it to be fair and accessible. So beyond just having a ID that has a photo on it, there are many other things they plan to do regarding voting.
How many people do you think are truly off the grid, could not identify themselves if they had to?
I think based on DMV figures, we're at about 600,000 North Carolinians who do not have the ID that would be required based on previous versions of Republican legislation.
Yeah, no doubt we will see you again. This debate will last for at least a month. We'll hope to have you back on Legislative Week in Review, and I appreciate it as always.
Well, I hope it's a successful run to try to get some legislation for North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you. Some House leaders want to change the state lottery's marketing strategy. A bill would require what sponsors call an honest accounting of a player's odds of winning and recognize that the advertised jackpots can be worth much less money.
This is the state of North Carolina doing this advertising, and I think we have an obligation to be honest.
The bill would freeze the types of lottery games offered in North Carolina and limit lottery advertising. The House and Senate are negotiating a bill to eliminate inactive state boards and commissions while replacing members of active boards. The Senate and House disagree on how fast to replace members of the State Utilities Commission and State Industrial Board. The Senate would void the current members' terms immediately. The House would shorten the terms. There's also disagreement over replacing some appointed judges. The Senate proposes an immediate vacancy of some of these judge positions. The word reasonable, it's a key word in legislation to protect missing children. House Bill 142 draws a line for adults who suspect a child is missing, but then don't report it. A House bill to require the reporting of children believed to be missing has ties to the case of Kaylee Anthony, a Florida girl who vanished and was found dead in 2008. Kaylee Anthony's disappearance wasn't reported until 31 days after her grandmother last saw her. In North Carolina, it's legal to not report a missing child.
There are a number of states that have come out with these, kinds of laws, and essentially, we're jumping on board because we've got to shore up, our ability to prosecute these kinds of situations.
Bill sponsors say charges filed under their legislation does not guarantee a conviction. A judge and jury would have the final say. But questions are raised about prosecuting a person for an action they did not take and the concept of breaking a law by doing nothing. What is reasonable to assume when someone thinks a child might be missing or kidnapped?
You've not a circumstance where it's not just whether you did or didn't, but any reasonable person standing in your shoes would have acted.
House Bill 149 sets a few guidelines. The child must be under 16 years old. A parent or guardian must have lost track of that child or not had contact with the missing child for a 24-hour period. To knowingly ignore a 24-hour disappearance potentially triggers the criminal charges.
If you're in the situation, if you're a fact and circumstance that you should know. You should know better, basically, you know. And so we use that in the legal framework as reasonable suspicion. So if you reasonably suspect that something's going on, then there's going to be a problem here. You better report that.
School teachers would not be responsible for students who run away from school if they follow state school absence reporting policies. Anyone who helps conceal a person's death or helps bury a body and doesn't call law enforcement would also face felony charges. The full Senate easily approved legislation to place pimps on the state sex offender registry. New Hanover County Senator Tom Goolsbee says North Carolina is a top 10 state for sex trafficking. He says the traffickers are often punished more lightly than prostitutes and their customers. The bill sits in the House. Infant screening for heart defects earned final House approval this week. The Senate Rules Committee will next consider whether our state's newborn screening program will include pulse oximetry. Sponsors say the addition would not markedly affect program costs. The Senate endorses giving people some legal protection for helping a drug overdose sufferer. So, for instance, someone ODs at a party. A person at the party who calls 911 would not face charges if authorities arrive to find small amounts of heroin or cocaine while on the 911 call. The bill would also protect medical personnel who administer anti-overdose drugs.
Drug overdose is the number 2 injury-related killer of young adults ages 15 to 34.
House legislation to take public school classrooms digital received warm Senate consideration this week. Senate supporters are now saying students thrive when using digital learning tools, and it's time the entire state enter a new educational era. The House bill that would convert school classrooms into digital or computer-based environments received a very warm welcome in the Senate this week, especially among senators serving areas that are challenged with making school technology upgrades.
For those who are still in the process of moving forward with integrating technology into the classroom, it really lays the foundation to help ease some of the knocks and bruises.
Some western mountain counties have infrastructure challenges where some areas can't or don't receive residential internet access easily, a problem identified by the Senate Education Committee members.
There's still a lot we need to do to make sure that we have an environment that's in place that we can have digital learning in all parts of this state. I have a lot of school districts that have a lot of trouble getting access to internet. I think devices coming on like the iPads help with that. Because content can be loaded at the schools and sent home, but there's still a ways to go.
Suburban counties aren't worried about internet access. Students are well connected and may be letting this texting and other digital communication methods interfere with proper grammar and human interaction. That's why some senators say it's time to put computers alongside books, but not replace them.
I do want it to be responsible integration into the classroom. I think that we need a combination of both the traditional ways of learning and then also our modern ways of learning, and we use all those tools to the benefit of the students.
Again, questions were raised about funding a statewide digital education conversion. The House endorses tapping unused lottery revenue, but Senate Education Committee Chairman Jerry Tillman offered a completely different vision. He wants to remove all strings to state education funding, except what's required by federal law. And he says expect his bill soon.
I'm just saying, if you've got limited resources, why not give you flexibility to use those where you need them? You got an elected school board and a superintendent that's supposed to know his stuff, and we're supposed to tell them that you can't put so many kids in this class, and you got to put so many there, and you need digital, but you can't spend it there. It's yours. Spend it where you want to.
It appears digital education might be coming to North Carolina, given its bipartisan support. Democrats and Republicans are behind buying the equipment and training the teachers, but paying that bill may yield to different proposals than tapping lottery money. A House bill could open police records of private college police for public inspection. House Bill 142 would release crime reports, including when and where a crime occurred. The defendant's name could be released, as could circumstances surrounding the arrest. College police records are subject to some regulations, so not all information would be released. The Senate Agriculture Committee is holding a bill. It could ban tobacco products from community college campuses. This is Senate Bill 23. It has bipartisan sponsors who would have a tobacco ban in place on campus beginning August 1st, 2014. The ban would cover all the buildings, the grounds, and properties owned by the community college system. Even college-sponsored events off-site must be tobacco-free. A lot of bills down here in the General Assembly, and Loretta Beniti, senior political reporter for News 14 Carolina, debuts on Legislative Week in Review, and I get to turn the table for a change. Loretta, what do you make of the session a month in?
Well, I feel like it's moving along pretty quickly. They had a couple big bills that they wanted to do right off the top of the session. You know, the Medicaid, Medicare bill, that one was obviously a top priority for them, get that taken care of right away. And we saw bills getting rolled out really quickly. I think we're starting to hit this lull where we're going to start noticing that they're working behind the scenes a lot on those big bills.
Yeah, I've heard lawmakers say, hey, we're getting accused of being too fast. I'll see the calendar. I see a lot of bills filed, but the committee meetings this week were relatively sparse.
Yeah, this week was, by legislative terms, a slow week. There was not a lot that happened this week. The biggest news this week was a press conference about voter ID, that they're going to start working on that bill. But as far as the actual bills that were voted on and debated, really.
Voter ID, the schedule looks like it's going to be a multi-month process. Why would Republicans keep it going that long, you think?
They want to look like they're trying to reach across the aisle. We're going to see a voter ID bill that has photo identification in it. There's no question about that. They're saying that. Democrats are saying, you put that in there, we're not voting for this bill. But they want to at least reach out to the people on the other side of the aisle. Perhaps we'll see a few tweaks here and there that will make it a little more palatable, but this is the effort to look like we're reaching across the aisle.
How will Democrats play? I had Larry Hall on this week's show, but how will Democrats play this issue? They don't have enough votes by a mile to stop this.
They're going to be noisy. It's going to be really noisy from their side of the aisle about disenfranchising voters, suppressing the vote, that Republicans are doing this simply so that they can stay in power. They're creating a problem that isn't there. They're going to get every expert they possibly can to come in and say, there's no need for this here in North Carolina. It's going to be very loud. I'm sure we'll see rallies about this issue. We did 2 years ago. In the end, not going to make any difference.
You know, the voter ID will be coming along around late March. The budget is supposed to come out from the governor in, a week or so from now, on probably a Monday morning. It's all going to converge. And out there, unspoken for the last 3 weeks, is tax reform.
Well, that's right. We kind of thought for a while here all of these bills were coming out in the beginning. It was so busy so that we would forget that, hey, there's this huge issue that's been going on for years and years and years behind the scene that everyone's talking about. It's quieting down now. So I think now is when we're wondering, are we going to hear more about tax reform? Will we start hearing how the House and Senate are talking about this? Because we hear a lot from the Senate leaders about what they want to do. They want to zero this out. They want to zero that out. We're not hearing as much from the House specifically what they want. And we think that the bill that they want to put out, they want it to be them to kind of be on the same page when that bill is introduced.
But I was in a meeting where the rules chairman of the Senate, Tom Apodaca, goes into the House committee, dresses them down in a nice way, because he does that with a smile on his face, and then he leaves. So now these bigger bills are coming, and he's already said this is not a way to run a session or start the session. So
everybody's been waiting for this. Everybody keeps saying, when are we going to see that there's a rift between the Republicans in the House, Republicans in the Senate? We saw it with Democrats when they had the House and Senate. We finally saw it this year come to light, and I definitely think that tax reform, we'll see it more.
I've seen some Democratic-themed tweets saying there is a rift. What's the difference in a rift and a debate?
I think the difference is whether or not there's any hard feelings, really. I mean, a debate is a debate, and you want these leaders to debate amongst themselves. You don't want everybody to be on the same page for everything, exactly. But when you see with Tom Apodaca come into a room and is visibly upset with what has happened to his bill, I mean, he's not happy with the Republicans in the House for what they did.
Loretta Beniti, News 14 Carolina. Watch if you're a Time Warner Cable subscriber, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
The Senate passed House legislation to update state tax code. The bill will sunset the state earned income tax credit and could be affected by any tax reform legislation. Democrats support that tax credit.
Some of these issues will be impacted when tax reform comes forward at some point during the session. And so what we need to do is be sure that the numbers add up and also that we're also standing on the principles that we will have in regard to tax reform.
1 out of 5 people in the state, incomes less than $41,000, get this credit. You're cutting it by 10%. So you are raising taxes on 1/5 of the state by cutting the earned income tax credit.
A bill to potentially overhaul North Carolina's tax system has been discussed for later this spring. The Senate approves closing a loophole that could out people with expunged criminal records. Senate Bill 91 would prevent government, private employers and colleges from asking applicants about an erased conviction. Licensing boards would face the same restrictions.
This bill imposes a civil penalty of up to $500 if an employer were to ask a prospective employee about an expunged crime. It would be administered by the Department of Labor.
Even if asked, applicants could refuse to discuss their past and not face employer discrimination because of it. Another Senate bill on the table would make licensing boards consider other factors than a criminal past in denying an applicant. Senate Bill 33 would end automatic denial based on a criminal conviction. Boards would then consider the details surrounding that crime and conviction, like when it happened and the applicant's age when they committed their crime. Licensed applicants must submit to criminal background checks if requested. Some Democratic representatives want to ban the box on job applications. That means employers could not even ask an applicant about a criminal conviction unless a job has been offered. That job offer, though, would allow a business to then inquire and seek a background check. Some sensitive jobs, like those with children or in finance, might be exempted to some degree. Violators would pay a $100 fine. Representative Marcus Brandon from Guilford County is trying to ban the box. I got to ask you about this. What's wrong with licensing boards and employers knowing right up front this person is applying for a job as a criminal record?
Because what it is that it's discriminatory. Because what we have found is that a lot of folks who have committed a crime, a lot of them did it when we were all young, and we all did the things, they just happened to get caught. And so they have a record, and now they're our age. Around in their mid-30s and 40s, and especially with this recession, they've lost a job and trying to get re-entered into the workforce. And we find that automatically by you checking that box, people throw your application right into the trash. You don't even get a chance to go in and get an interview, be able to tell your story. So the unemployment rate for people who have been convicted of a crime is 5 times that amount of the regular population. And so what you do is perpetuate a problem, especially in communities like I serve.
So we're talking about people who may have committed a crime at 18 and then maybe they're 35 or 28 and It's been 10 years. We're not talking about the guy who just rolled out of prison a year ago, or it would apply to them too.
It would apply to them too, but mostly the cases of what you see is that what you see is that people who are 35, 40, even 50 years old who are still struggling to get into the workplace because of a mistake that they made 20 years ago. And
you're talking about people who also made a mistake 2 years ago. And if I'm hiring someone, if anybody's hiring anyone, wouldn't you think content of character would be a legitimate question to ask up front?
I think that the mistakes that you made doesn't also determine your character because people get rehabilitated. And I think that what you can do is that everybody, what this bill does is it doesn't preclude anybody from doing any of that. You can always do a background check if that's what you think necessary. If you're an entity that deals with children, we expect you to do background checks. And if you're a financial institution, you'll probably do background checks also. But this is for everyday employers. This is a way to weed people out.
Okay, the mechanics of this are you apply for a job, you have a criminal record. You cannot be asked about your criminal past if you have one.
That's right.
Until you're given a conditional job offer.
Right.
Okay, we want to hire you. Then the person can look into your past history.
That is right.
Is that for every job or for jobs involving kids, money?
It's for every job, and I think that the reason why a lot of people like this bill is because some of the expungement laws that we have passed doesn't even allow them to do that because the record is expunged and you don't know whether or not what their record was before. Here, you still have the opportunity, if you want to be able to go back and look at that record. All we're saying is give the person a chance. Don't throw their application in the trash can simply because they checked that box. You don't know the complete story of why somebody checks that box.
I've seen other bills with the licensing boards not being able to ask about a former criminal expunction. So is this tie in well? Are you in line with what Republicans want to do?
Yes, I think it's in line with what they want to do. And so I think it's going to be very interesting how this bill flows through the General Assembly because on one hand, we're saying we want to do this on the licensing boards and we want to change that. And I think that this is aligned with that. And I think that there's a good chance. And I think that we have to get into the mindset of folks that simply because you make a mistake doesn't mean that you have to be cursed for the rest of your life, to be excluded from employment, housing, and all of the things that ex-offenders are excluded from simply because they've made a mistake. And usually they make a mistake the same way that most people in our society make a mistake. They just happen to get caught. And so now that, they're 40, 50, they're still paying for the mistake. They paid their debt to society, and they still can't get a job. And that doesn't serve well for anybody, because people are going to eat. They're going to eat the right way or going to eat the way they have to, but guaranteed they're always going to eat.
And that's Representative Marcus Brandon, Guilford County. Thank you, sir, for being on.
Thank you so much.
Senate legislation would guarantee local contractors a chance to win local public construction contracts. Local governments would be required to call local contractors and give them a proposed project specs and the bidding process. And every local bidder who bids would be guaranteed an explanation if they don't receive the contract. The bill sits in the Senate's Commerce Committee. The State House is crafting a resolution to demand our congressional delegation protect the Second Amendment. Craven County Representative Michael Speciale's bill also calls out the President, Vice President, Congress, and the Supreme Court.
We here in the North Carolina General Assembly are the last bastion of hope between the citizens and an ever-encroaching federal government. Basically, what I have here is a sense of the North Carolina House of Representatives.
If approved, each U.S. congressperson representing North Carolina would receive the resolution. Legislative Week in Review is online. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/legweek. If you have a deeper thought on your mind, send us an email. We'll answer everyone. legweek@unctv.org. And if you're on Twitter, follow us at Leg Week in Review. That's our show for this week. Thank you so much for watching.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.